Alright. We are here. And welcome. 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 We are here for some more of some very interesting things going on here. So we're back for part 4 of me reading Not Guilty by BrightBriar, the Yugioh fanfiction, which never thought I would read, especially after I've basically given up doing anything with Yu-Gi-Oh, but you know, whatever. I don't really care at this point. So yeah, it kind of just happens. Yeah, I got nothing. Yeah, I don't really know. So yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out here. I'm terrible at this. Yeah, so it's been a bit since I did this because I've been having issues with myself recently. So, woo. But yeah, I really needed to do this because I was just like I need to just do something. So here we are, Not Guilty by BrightBriar, Chapter 4, Panic Wave. Currently playing a game on the side on my phone, so that's helpful. Wow, that's what I wanted. I don't know what I just did. Oh, good. See that? It's good. Let me just play a game. This is the best thing to be doing right now. Oh, man. Me just okay, I need to actually begin this, but I can't be bothered. Oh, God. Whoa, that's something I don't care. Oh, no! Oh, damn. Let's leave that there for the moment. Man, we're really paying attention to the game, right? So, here we are. It only took half a day for Merrick and Bakura to fall into a comfortable, familiar rhythm. Bakura, what the fuck have you done with my hairbrush? What the bloody hell, Merrick? I haven't done anything with your hairbrush. And who moved it? Because I swear to the gods, I left it on top of that filing cabinet yesterday. Why would you put your hairbrush on top of a filing cabinet? Fuck off, I'll do what I like with my hairbrush. But of all places, the only reason you should be concerned is that it's not there anymore and you're the only logical culprit. Merrick ran his hand through his thick, scruffy blonde hair, slightly scruffier than usual in the absence of his hairbrush. He was standing in the center of the room, hands on his hips, shooting the spirit a dirty look. He scanned the whole room multiple times, which left only one possibility, but Bakura had done something with it. Do you think this is funny? Bakura stared at him, already 110% done with this conversation. Merrick, I don't have a physical body. How the fuck could I have moved it? Oh yeah, recap to last time, Merrick was, in Japan still, seeing who caused this shadow-like game, and he met the spirit of Bakura in all this ridiculousness. Anyways. Bakura, that's bullshit, Merrick said, glaring daggers at him, folding his arms across his chest. You were making Mokuba's door swing open and shut last night, and I had to try and explain it at 4 a.m. You can't prove that was me. Could have been the wind. Oh, and the Duel Monsters decks shuffling themselves was the wind too, was it? Bakura leaned back against the desk, smirking, his hands held up in mock surrender. Oh, come on, it was funny. Merrick felt a prick of irritation as the corner of his lip flicked upwards. He turned his face away from Bakura to hide it. His eyes fell on a tray of paper sitting on top of the work desk. He glowered at it as though the inanimate object was to blame for all this. Fuck it, fine, it was funny, but do you want to get me kicked out? Merrick, calm down, I was just messing around. Just like you were with the hairbrush. Oh, fuck off about that already. Merrick turned around, glaring at Bakura so intensely that the spirit visibly flinched. I'll fuck off when you tell me where you put it. Since it isn't where I left it, and no one else could have come in, you're the only other person who has access to it. You're the only one who's had the means and the opportunity. Bakura swallowed and raised an eyebrow at him. Alright then, what's my motive? Oh, I don't know, maybe you want to use it? After all, your hair is such a mess that... Merrick, if my hair is still a mess, then I haven't used it, have I? The spirit snapped. Merrick opened his mouth and then shut it again. Touché, but you're still a petty piece of shit, and that makes for a motive that's equally viable. Oh my god. Like, you know, sometimes it's funny and nice to have, like, chapters like this. Just, just like extra sort of filler chapters, I guess you could say, in the middle of serious stories, but like, I don't know. The story is incredibly long, so having a incredibly long filler chapter is not exactly what I'd be looking for. But I don't know. Sometimes the silliness of some of this takes away from how this is supposed to be a very serious story. But like, this is just ridiculous. Like, honestly. Anyways. Bakura sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Merrick, we're working together. I can be petty, certainly, but not towards someone that I'm tolerating because we have the same end goal. That would be counterproductive. Oh, so you're tolerating me now. If I remember correctly, you were the one begging me for help, Merrick said smugly. Bakura glared at him. Shut up, I don't beg. You have a hairbrush to find, remember? Merrick narrowed his eyes, pouting. Don't say that as if you have nothing to do with it. That's just it. I don't. Merrick sighed. This was getting him nowhere. His eyes scoured the room again, finally finding his backpack, which still held the millennium items. He grinned. We'll see about that, Kura. What? The spirit eyed him warily, his gaze flicking between the items and Merrick. Merrick grinned. Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything to you yet. He unzipped the bag, reaching for the millennium ring, then holding it out in front of him. Alright, ring, who's the culprit? Merrick's heart sank as the sharp prongs poked back over the top of the ring itself, directly at him. Bakura watched the ring, his eyes glittering with amusement and triumph. I'm glad that stupid ring has at least a scrap of loyalty. Merrick frowned, ignoring him. But I left it on the filing cabinet. The ring's prongs quivered and then pointed towards the windowsill. Merrick blinked, walking over. But I already checked. The prongs jolted to the left, now pointing at the thin cord hanging down from the top of the window. Merrick pulled on it, opening the blinds properly. The hairbrush had been on the windowsill, sitting behind the blinds. You didn't check behind the blinds? Jesus Christ. Bakura looked incredibly pleased with himself, smirking at Merrick from across the room. Merrick glared at him. Shut up. What, I didn't say anything, or should His Royal Highness the Thief King be gloating? Merrick rolled his eyes, cuffing him over the back of his head with the hairbrush, grinning. This Royal Highness can go fuck himself. Oh my god. Bakura eyed the duelist mischievously. If I were really a king, who knows, maybe I'd have people do that for me. Well, you're not, and you don't, so there. Oh my god, shut up. Merrick huffed, swiping the hairbrush through his hair so quickly that finding it probably hadn't been worth the effort. He dropped it down onto the bed and threw his coat over his shoulders. I'm heading out to Tadako's funeral just in case I learn something. Bakura frowned. You weren't invited, were you? No, but it's not a kokobetsushiki. I don't know what that means. That would have happened a few days ago along with the cremation. Today there's a Western memorial service. They're doing both since Killer's mother was from the U.S., he fretted Bakura. How come you know about how Japanese funerals work anyway? The spirit grinned, almost wolfishly. I got to attend one just after I met Ryu. Incidentally, I also caused it. Merrick stared at Bakura for a few moments, trying to work out exactly what he meant. Then his eyes widened slightly, his blood running cold, gaze dropping. You shouldn't be so proud of that. Bakura paused, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, realizing he'd somehow touched a nerve. He spoke slowly, carefully as though he was navigating a minefield, his voice a little less arrogant and a little more gentle. What do you mean? Merrick was silent, still running the parallels through his mind. Ryu's father and his father. Ryu's darker half and his darker half. Ryu's father's father. Jesus. Ryu's father's funeral and his father's funeral. I've attended a funeral that I caused too, you know, he said slowly, quietly. You shouldn't be proud of it. Bakura was quiet for a long time, piecing things together. Then his eyes widened. Oh, sorry. Merrick looked at him sullenly. Really? Bakura swallowed, looking embarrassed, waving his hand dismissively. I'm not sorry about what I did, but I'm sorry I upset you. Merrick's gaze flicked to the floor again. Well, I guess that's something. The spirit nodded, having the decency to look a little bit remorseful. He folded his arms, glaring out the window. If it makes you feel any better, as long as we're working together, I won't go to any more funerals that I caused. Seeing as you've changed since Battle City, I'll try not to create any more funerals to go to. Merrick blinked, his eyes flicking over to the spirit once more wary, but pleasantly surprised. He smiled, his gaze softening. All right, me too. Merrick had only been to one funeral before. It wasn't a funeral that he liked to remember. 3 people had attended, including himself. There was no speeches, no flowers, no black umbrellas in the rain, no words of consolation, nor remembering the happy times, because there had been none. No assurances that the soul of the deceased was in a better place. There had only been anger. Merrick had believed that his father's death was the will of the pharaoh, as he, Ishizu, and Rashid had buried his father deep beneath the earth where he had always felt he belonged. Merrick's heart had been rife with pure, unbridled rage. First it had been the will of the pharaoh that Merrick stay underground all his life. Then it had been the will of the pharaoh for him to have the hieroglyphics carved into his back with a hot knife. And finally, according to the turban-clad stranger who had spoken to him and his sister, it had been the will of the pharaoh to have for him to have to see his own father, his eyes lifeless, slumped against the wall, more blood outside of his body than in. He and his siblings had stared at the spot where their father had been laid to rest, silently, for a long time. Ishizu read a sacred text which he thought their father would have wanted to have been read. Rashid carved a kind of gravestone for him, marked with hieroglyphics bearing their father's name, so that he might move on to the next life, his soul intact. But the funeral had been missing one thing: actual mourning. There was a thick sense of melancholy and regret, certainly. Rashid had regretted the fact that he'd never earned the man's approval or respect. Ishizu regretted the fact that his death had been the consequence of her taking Merrick outside of the tombs. Merrick regretted the fact that he, despite being right there, couldn't remember any of it. But none of them could truly, honestly say that they'd ever wished he hadn't died that day. After learning that he'd killed his own father 1 year ago, Merrick's feelings regarding everything that had happened changed substantially. When Merrick looked back on it now, he still didn't mourn his father, but he wasn't angry. Instead, there was nothing but guilt. Only guilt. Regarding his father, his guilt came in 2 parts. First, understandably, he regretted being the one to kill him. He'd been the one to hold the rod, to drive it into his father's flesh and carve it into pieces. He'd been the one to slice and slice and slice and slice until his father's blood was smeared across the wall, staining the floor red. He'd been the one to end up with blood on his hands, his clothes, his face. He'd been the one to play Lady Macbeth, scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing, feeling as though he'd never get all the blood off. But he'd also felt guilty about not regretting his father's death itself, only regretting that it had been at his hands. Whenever he thought of his father, bile rose in his throat, not because of everything that he'd done when he was alive, and not even because Merrick had stabbed him himself, but because Merrick knew he could never feel truly sorry about it. He knew that somewhere out there, his father reached a place where his soul was safe. He was cursing him. He was cursing his son for not mourning him. He was cursing his son for not missing him. He was cursing his son for being selfish, only regretting his death because he was part of it. Because of his part of it. Yikes. Merrick hated himself for that too. Usually he dealt with all this by not thinking about it, by pushing it to the darkest corners of his mind, hoping it would go away, that someone else would deal with it. It wasn't until he attended the second funeral of his life that he realized that wasn't always going to work. If Hollywood was anything to go by, you'd think funerals were always held when it was raining, when the sky was dark. But today everything seemed unnaturally bright. The sky was blotted out by vast white clouds which seemed to glow from their insides. The sunlight bounced off the thick white snow which had settled on the ground. A slight wind stirred in the air, and everything smelled cold and wet. Merrick arrived at the small park at 10 a.m., a black trench coat protecting him from the cold, and a scarf concealing his face. White plastic chairs had been placed on the grass, with a narrow aisle down the middle. People dressed in black were milling around in small groups. Merrick didn't recognize any of them. A few of them wore dual discs, but most of them seemed like they were simply family and friends. He craned his neck, trying to spot Yuki. The other duelist had said the other day that he was planning on going to the memorial service to pay his respects. Given his bright, eccentric hair, even taking into account his short stature, it was odd that Merrick was struggling to find him in the crowd. He pulled his phone, sending him a quick text. "Hey, Yugi, I'm at the memorial. Are you still coming?" There was no answer. Merrick pushed his hands into his pockets, suddenly feeling deeply uncomfortable. Yugi wasn't here. He wouldn't know anyone. He was alone with his thoughts. He swallowed, his mouth feeling dry, shaking hair out of his eyes. He made his way towards the seats, voices echoing through his mind. Who is that kid? I've never seen him before. Did he know Tadako? I don't know, but he knows something about Tadako's death. He thinks it might have been murder. Murder? Tadako was playing a card game. But the circumstances of his death were still very odd. But why is he here? Surely he doesn't suspect us of anything. I'm sure he doesn't. Death by card games? What next? Soon they'll be telling us those kids are being possessed by their own hatred, killing their fathers with no memory of it. He doesn't miss him. He never mourned him. He lives with that every day. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! Merrick flinched. He felt sharp, stabbing pain deep in his skull. He gritted his teeth, his vision darkening for a moment, before the feeling dissipated. He reached for the back of one of the chairs, trying to steady himself, trying to breathe, trying to clear his mind, his hands shaking. He felt like his father was watching him, like he was breathing down his neck. The eyes of everyone around him were his eyes, and they were filled with anger. Guilt burned in the back of his throat like acid. Funerals were anger. Funerals were guilt. Slowly, shakily, he let go of the chair in front of him and sat down, sinking into the hard plastic, sucking a deep breath. You can do this. You can do this. You can't fix the past, but you can do this. He sat there, staring blankly ahead while people continued to mill around him. How come you deserve to be here when you... Shut up. You cut his life short. Shut up. Murderer. Shut up. You killed. Shut up. Hey, are you okay? Merrick looked up suddenly as another voice cut into his thoughts, a much more corporeal one. A tall young man, not as tall as Kaiba, but significantly taller than Merrick, stood close to him in front of the chair to his left. Wispy dark bangs hung over his eyes. Ah! A long black coat hung off his thin frame. Merrick blinked at him, reality shifting back to normal. I'm fine. The stranger smiled. No, you're not. He sat down next to Merrick without asking any further questions, resting his elbows on the backs of the chairs next to him, staring ahead at the podium in front of the chairs. Merrick suddenly noticed the dual disc on his left arm. You're a duelist? The stranger glanced at him. Yeah, Hiroki Hirata, and you're... He trailed off, hesitating. You're not Merrick Ishtar, are you? Merrick was unable to hide his surprise. Yeah, I am. Should I know you? Hiroki shook his head. No, I just recognized you. I have a good memory for faces and names. I think I saw a picture of you in the article about the Battle City Finals in a magazine somewhere. Your hair was different, though. Poofy. Merrick swallowed hard, his blood feeling like ice in his veins. Oh, yeah, I changed it. It's nice to meet you, Merrick said awkwardly. Did you... I guess you know Kyoru. Hiromi nodded, his gaze darkening. Yeah, he and I were rivals. A single word blared through Merrick's mind. Motive. He paused, then pushed it away. He opened his mouth to respond, but Hiroki got in first. What about you? How do you know him? Hiroki asked, brushing the hair out of his eyes. Merrick hesitated. I never met him. I didn't know him personally. I just wanted to figure out why he... Yeah, Hiroki said it a little too loudly, interrupting him. Why he went like that. He sat in silence for a few moments. Hiroki eventually spoke again. It's made some people want to stop dueling, you know. People are scared. Merrick glanced at him. Really? Oh, for sure. They don't know how or why this happened. They're worried it could happen to them, but not me, he said firmly, his grip on the chair tightening. If there's any way to honor Kyoru, it's by keeping on going. The next time I duel, I'm going to do it for him. Merrick's eyebrows lifted. That's brave of you. Hiroki smiled. Yeah, well, he deserves it. Hey, if you wanted to ask me anything about him, since you're looking into this, feel free. I don't know what makes you think you can work it out, but I'll do what I can to help. Merrick considered this, eyeing Hiroki, smiling gratefully. That'll be fantastic. Thank you, Hiroki. You're welcome, but we probably shouldn't discuss it here. He pulled out his phone, opening up his contacts, then searching for his own name. He handed the phone to Merrick. My number. Merrick's eyebrows shot upwards, a hint of color rising to his cheeks as he realized this was the first time he'd gotten a guy's number. Okay. No, you're not using it for those purposes. He pulled his own phone out, adding Hiroki to his contacts. Hiroki took his phone back, a hint of smile pulling at the corners of his lips. Let me know when you wanted to meet up, or if there's anything I can do to help. Merrick smiled back, giving a polite nod. Of course. He broke off as they simultaneously noticed someone walking up to the podium. Hiroki leaned closer to Merrick, whispering, Kirusato, Tadako's father. Oh. My eyes, I can't see anything. I just took a shower and there some water or soap or something got into my eye and it's not doing well. Probably shouldn't have immediately started trying to read a bunch of stuff on a screen. Anyways, let's just continue. Okay. Merrick nodded, biting his tongue as his anxiety began to grow again because funerals. His foot bounced nervously, and he felt more sensitive to the cold, making his spine shudder and the hair on the back of his neck rise. Kurosato was saying something, but Merrick was so uneasy that he couldn't absorb any of it. Hiroki, noticing Merrick's restlessness, glanced at him, his eyes concerned. Are you okay? Not really, Merrick stammered in a low voice. Funerals stress me out a bit, that's all. Hirata's gaze softened, and he rested his foot against Merrick's as a comforting gesture, holding it still, offering a soft smile. Merrick lowered his gaze, embarrassed, burying his nose in his scarf. I should be able to deal with my goddamn emotions on my own. Most of the funeral was a blur. A few people made speeches, most of them members of Kyo's immediate family, but as they went on, Merrick's anxiety only grew. His other legs started bouncing, and he began to feel sick, his vision blurring and swaying. I shouldn't have come. This was a bad idea. I'm not going to one of these damn things again. I'm Tadako's younger sister. Merrick's eyes looked up suddenly as a voice, a phrase, jerked him from his thoughts. Mokuba mentioned that. He straightened his back to get a better look, the churning feeling in his stomach fading slightly. A young girl stared out at the small congregation, her dark eyes shining with grief. No older than 15, the sleeves of her charcoal gray jumper were pulled over her hands, and a black coat was draped over her shoulders. Her hair, dark and silky, was swept into a ponytail at the nape of her neck, though there was such negligible amount of hair in the ponytail itself that Merrick hardly saw the point. She had a wad of palm cards held in her left hand, which was shaking. Her voice, although thick with emotion, was steady, but Merrick couldn't hear any of the words. Most of him still felt like he was at the bottom of a swimming pool, and he couldn't swim, yet somehow he was able to latch onto the girl behind the podium. Then he felt something warm against his back. He took a sharp breath, as he realized it was a Millennium item. Oh fuck, gods, this can't be good. Suddenly his surroundings changed. A completely different scene materialized around him. The sky became dark, dotted with countless stars. The ground beneath him turned to sand, and everything else disappeared, replaced with wind and emptiness. A moment later, the ancient sandstone built itself around him, becoming an elegant courtyard filled with leafy green plants and worn paths, enclosed by a series of tall archways. He glanced around frantically, trying to work out where he was, stopping as he saw Tadako's sister still in front of him. Everyone else had disappeared, but she was still there. She was wearing different clothes, not looking at him, not seeing him. Merrick blinked. Wait, what the fuck? And then, as quickly as the vision had taken shape, the world snapped back to normal. Merrick, the duelist jumped, startled. He glared at Hiroki still next to him on the podium. Tadako's sister was gone. He stared at the empty podium, his mind racing. Was the necklace doing that? Who is she? Was she... Merrick, can you hear me? Merrick felt a prick of irritation as he was forced to stop his train of thought. He glanced at Hiroki, feigning a smile. Yeah, I'm fine. Hiroki eyed him skeptically through his silky dark bangs. Are you sure? You blanked out for a solid half hour, like you were even less responsive than before. Really? Did a half hour pass just then? Yeah, but you seem fine now. Do you feel okay? No worse than before, he said, his head feeling oddly light. Better, actually. Roki scrutinized him for a moment longer and then nodded, satisfied. Okay, then, if you're sure. Merrick nodded. I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. As he spoke, he felt the beginning of a headache coming on, but he pushed it back. I guess I'll see you later, if you were still okay with talking about Tadako. Yeah, for sure. I'll text you. The tomb keeper smiled. That'd be great. Roki nodded, standing up, pushing his hands to his pockets. Cool. See you then. See you. Roki gave a curt nod and then strode away, coat billowing behind him. Merrick stood up, his head reeling, both from confusion about what happened a few moments and or half an hour ago, and because this headache was growing rapidly worse. He felt himself get jittery again, struggling to keep his hands still, stomach turning. Jesus. I need to leave. I need to get out. He considered trying to find Hadako's sister for a few moments because what the actual fuck, but decided against it. If that vision was the necklace's doing, everything would make itself clear in time. Or something. Either way, he couldn't stand being here a moment longer. He could find her another time. Gritting his teeth, the pain in his temple worsening as he moved away from the chairs, feeling unsteady on his feet. His eyes were screwed half shut. He wondered if, on top of everything else, he was getting a migraine as well. He left the park, rounding a corner, turning into a narrow street lined? That'd be about right. A migraine was only the start of what he deserved. Fucking funerals. Then everything suddenly got worse. Merrick let out a broken cry as he felt a stabbing pain in his forehead, as though there was some kind of sharp pressure all through the inside of his skull. He staggered backwards, just as shocked as he was in pain. What the? He shrieked as it happened again. His breath began to come in ragged gasps, as he felt though his chest was being constricted. His legs trembled, threatening to give way entirely. He sank to his knees, threading his fingers through his hair, gripping his head so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His temple throbbed with a slow, steady, agonizing rhythm, his thoughts grinding to a complete halt. Spasms racked his body. He curled into a ball, his elbows resting on the hard black ground, his eyes screwed shut as pain coursed through him so strongly that it threatened to sweep him away. His head pounded. Voices, memories, ghosts of the past. They assaulted him like a volley of bullets, shattering his skull into pieces, breaking down his resolve. Tears spilled down his cheeks, never ending. He screamed as he felt familiar, burning pain in his back, but it sounded distant. If the sounds of his own screams weren't so familiar to him, he wouldn't have known that scream was his own. Slice and slice and slice and slice. Then the darkness behind his eyes changed, fading. There was a light near him, a sanctuary. He opened his eyes, suddenly pulled back to reality by a pair of bright, glaring lights racing toward him. He heard a loud blaring noise which seemed to come from everywhere at once, and a rush of air seemed to cut through him. Everything went very slowly, but he couldn't move. There was a yell, but that wasn't his own. The light got closer. Merrick suddenly felt an arm around his waist, his own arm being thrown over someone's shoulder. His vision spun as he was lifted upwards, his feet dragging along the ground as he was carried away from the light speeding towards him, and oh shit, that was a car. His neck snapped around as he watched the car speed past, headlights glittering. Terror coursed through his veins, and he realized he was shaking violently. It took another moment to process who his rescuer was, someone shorter than himself with inky black hair. He couldn't see her face. He'd been thrown half over her shoulder. He saw a shoe, her shoe, in the middle of the road behind them. Bent and crumpled, the sole collapsed, the heel snapped, straps mangled. He swallowed, his heart leaping to his throat. Fuck, that could have been me. He was set down, his back propped against the wall of the building on the opposite side of the street. His rescuer stepped back, crouching in front of him, letting him recover. Dark eyes wide, the irises were so dark they might as well have been black. Merrick stared at her, eyes widening as he suddenly recognized her. Tadako's sister? The other Kyoru blinked, frowning. Yeah, Akira. You were at the funeral? She spoke slowly, a little breathless. You were in the crowd. Yeah, thank you. Then, as quickly as the car had approached, the excruciating pain in his forehead returned. Unprepared, a shout of alarm escaped him, and he clutched his head, doubling over. His breath coming hard and fast. It was as though Someone was taking a drill and boring it into his skull from every possible direction. Are you okay? No, Kira reached for her phone. Hold on, I'm going to call an ambulance. What? No! Merrick didn't know what this was, but he didn't want to get anyone else involved. And panicking, he found the strength to pull his backpack off his shoulders, reaching for the rod. Kira didn't look twice at it, lifting the phone to her ear. Hi, I've come across someone. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. Merrick gripped the rod tightly, taking a long, deep, shuddering breath, holding the rod out, screwing up his eyes, focusing every shred of his willpower into getting that phone out of Kira's hands. Yellow aura surrounded it, and it was torn out of her hands, flying briefly through the air before smashing against the wall. Kira's head whipped back towards him, her eyes wide with shock, full of questions. The rod clattered to the ground, and the pain intensified. Merrick curled into himself more, his head between his knees. Kira stared at the rod and then at Merrick. Okay, then. Merrick gritted his teeth, trying not to think about the consequences of so blatantly using the rod in front of someone who knew nothing about anything, and which wasn't very hard, considering the fact that his head felt like it might explode at any moment. Kira edged towards him, placing a hand on his back as his breath hitched again and again and again and again. She watched him carefully, her eyes bright with concern and unease. It's okay. You're going to be okay. Merrick nodded, swallowing, meeting her gaze briefly before pain forced his eyes to shut again. His senses were overloaded. Everything was loud and bright and painful, and looking at anything was too much. Kira was still unsettled, on edge, following what Merrick had done with the rod. Whenever anything made a noise, she would turn around to make sure no one else was watching them, her eyes like a hawk's. Her feet were braced against the pavement, ready to run at any moment, but she sat there, silently waiting for Merrick to recover. Something about her presence was calming. It banished the shadows threatening to creep up on him. The pain in his forehead lessened. Merrick stared at the road, his head throbbing. Brow furrowed as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. The funeral had unlocked a door. The door to the room where he shoved all his anxiety, all his regrets, all his misgivings about his father. They'd bubbled up when he hadn't been expecting them. He hadn't been prepared. He just needed to find the key to that door and lock it all up again, and everything would be fine. Everything would be fine. Except he dragged someone else into everything. Kyoru Akira, who he'd had some kind of vision about only 2 minutes ago. He pinched the bridge of his nose, head spinning. Gods, what the fuck is going on? She waited patiently while he got a hold of himself. The pain in his skull was still there, still sharp. There's a little fly in here. Hey, get out of my fucking face! Hey! She waited patiently while he got a hold of himself. The pain in his skull was still there, still sharp and fresh, but it wasn't as intense. He could block it out for the most part. He stared at the pavement, his breathing still ragged. Ow! Damn it! Stupid fly. Ow! My hands hurt. Oh. God damn it. I think I'm okay now. Kira eyed him carefully. She removed his hand from her chest, letting go of his wrist. Give me your phone. What? You broke mine, so I need to borrow yours. Merrick looked at her, his eyes uncertain. Promise me you're not going to call anyone. Ow. No, that's not what I had in mind. He hesitated, then reached into his pocket, handing it over, leaning backwards, resting his head against the wall, and staring at the sky. His girl next to him typed something. The clouds were light, fluffy, serene. Kyoru handed the phone back to him. There was a GIF on the screen, a circle moving in and out. Synchronize your breathing with this. Merrick's eyes widened slightly in surprise, his expression softening. He took the phone gratefully, holding it on both hands, making an effort to do as she said. He took a slow breath in and then started coughing. Kira leaning it back against the wall, glancing at him. You still haven't told me your name. Her voice carried a hint of both wariness and sorry. Yeah, it's Merrick, he choked out, focusing on the GIF. Kira was silent as Merrick slowed his breathing down. Inhale, exhale. What the fuck was that? Inhale, exhale. This hasn't happened since... Shit! Still don't think I got the fly, but I made my phone fall on the floor. Inhale, exhale. Calm down. It was just a funeral. The funeral got you all stressed out. Inhale, exhale. Satisfied that his breathing was steadier and that he was calm, he turned to Kiro. Thank you. Kiro nodded, looking away. It was nothing. Kiro, that car would have hit me, he insisted. You saved my life. Kira glanced at him, looking self-conscious, speaking quickly. Kira's fine. After that, it wouldn't be right to ask you to be formal. Besides, it really was nothing. I heard you screaming and came to see what was going on. Did what anyone else would have done, right? I couldn't watch, not after. Her gaze clouded. Oh. There was a long pause. Merrick wasn't sure what he could say. Finally, Akira spoke, her voice tight. I couldn't watch anyone else die, okay? Merrick swallowed. Yeah, that makes sense. Akira paused, then shook her head as if to clear it, slumping back against the wall, looking almost exasperated. It's the only thing about this damn mess that makes sense, she said quietly, her eyes dark, fixed on the pavement. Fucking mood, screaming internally. Merrick could only nod. Fucking mood. Jesus Christ. Nothing was making sense. The vision, Bakura's reappearance, Sadako's death. Although regarding that last thing, Akira was even more clueless than Merrick was, not knowing about the Millennium items. There were so many things he could tell her, things he could explain, things that would mean everything made even a little bit more sense. Things she would probably ask about anyway, given that he'd seen her use a rod. Sure, it would create as many questions as it answered, but she deserved to know. Besides, if he'd seen her in that vision, she was probably connected to them somehow anyway. He picked the rod up off the ground, turning it over in his hands. I should probably explain. Do you know what this is? Her eyes locked onto the rod, her voice sharp. No, I don't. Merrick hesitated. He knew he was either doing something right or fucking up magnificently. Probably both. He took one last breath. Could you ever believe in magic? And that is it for that. Oh my god. That is a long chapter. Like, that is possibly the longest one we've had so far. So, yeah, we're gonna have to end the episode here. Like I said, I would love to get like 2 chapters done in a single episode. There's been a new chapter since last time. Good. This is 11 chapters now. Damn it. Okay. Yeah, so we're gonna have to wait. Next time we'll come back with another fanfiction, actually. It'll be a different one. And then we'll come back with this afterwards, splitting this up because this is gonna be a long one. I didn't get it. God, fucking stupid flies. Anyways, that'll be the end. Next time we'll come back with something different. I honestly don't know what it is because I still haven't read it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm gonna go stare out a window because my eyes. I probably shouldn't be looking at a screen with my eyes being so like ah. Yeah, we're gonna have to end it here. I'm just rambling. Keep rambling. Just keep doing it. Never end the episode.